The billboard loomed over Times Square. Ethan Caldwell's face plastered across it. His jaw sharp. His smile calculated. Forbes 30 Under 30 hailed him as a tech prodigy. A self-made millionaire who'd clawed his way from nothing to the penthouse suite. But as he stood below, the weight of a decade-old secret clawed at his chest, threatening to unravel everything. 10 years ago, Ethan was just a kid in a small Ohio town, where the air smelled of cornfields and judgment. At 17, he'd been caught kissing a boy behind the high school bleachers, a moment that should have been soft, fleeting, but instead became a guillotine. His father, a pastor with a voice like thunder, dragged him home, his mother's silence louder than any sermon. By morning, Ethan was on a bus to nowhere, his backpack stuffed with 2 shirts and a heart full of shame. Columbus, then Chicago, then New York, each city a rung on a ladder he built from grit and lies. Now, at 27, he was untouchable. Or so he thought. The truth was, Ethan hadn't escaped his past. He'd buried it. His company, Lamora, was a tech empire built on AI-driven mental health apps, promising hope to millions. Investors loved him. The media adored him. But none of them knew about the boy he'd kissed that night, the one who'd vanished after Ethan was exiled. Lucas Reyes, the name he never spoke, was a ghost that haunted every boardroom smile. Tonight, Ethan stood in a sleek Manhattan penthouse, the city glittering below like a promise he'd already broken. The gala was a who's who of tech moguls, their laughter sharp as champagne flutes clinked. Ethan's suit was custom, his charm polished, but his eyes kept darting to the door. He'd heard rumors Lucas was in New York. A photographer now, scraping by, but alive. The thought made Ethan's pulse race, a mix of dread and longing he couldn't untangle. Mr. Caldwell. A word. A reporter from TechCrunch. Her smile predatory. Cornered him near the bar. Your app's saving lives. But what's the story behind the man? Small-town kid to Forbes, any skeletons in that closet? Ethan's laugh was smooth. Practiced. Just a lot of coffee and late nights, he said, deflecting with the ease of someone who'd spent years dodging landmines. But her eyes lingered, and he felt the familiar panic creep in. What if she dug too deep? What if Lucas was out there, ready to expose him? He excused himself, slipping onto the balcony where the city's hum drowned out the party. The cold bit his skin, but it was nothing compared to the chill of memory. Lucas, with his crooked grin and calloused hands, had been the only one who saw Ethan for who he was, not the preacher's son, not the outcast, just Ethan. They'd planned to run away together, to build a life where they didn't have to hide. But after Ethan was kicked out, Lucas disappeared. No calls, no letters, just silence. Now, Ethan was a name on a billboard, but the cost was a life built on half-truths. He'd never come out publicly. Lamora's investors, many of them conservative, wouldn't take kindly to a gay CEO. His carefully curated image charismatic, straight, untarnished, was a house of cards. One whisper of his past, one photo of him and Lucas, and it could all collapse. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I saw you on the news. We need to talk. L. Ethan's breath caught. Lucas. After 10 years. He was back. The city lights blurred as Ethan gripped the railing, his mind racing. Was this a reunion or a reckoning? The next morning, Ethan sat in his glass-walled office, the skyline a mocking reminder of how high he'd climbed. His assistant, Priya, handed him a coffee, her brow furrowed. You okay, boss? You look like you saw a ghost. Something like that, Ethan muttered, his eyes on his phone. Lucas's text had no follow-up, no address, just a demand hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Ethan had spent the night scouring social media, finding Lucas's photography page, gritty street shots, raw and unfiltered, each one screaming the defiance Ethan had lost somewhere along the way. He typed a reply, Deleted it. Typed again. Where are you? Let's meet. He hit send before he could overthink it. The response came instantly. Greenpoint. 8 p.m. The old warehouse on Kent Street. Don't ghost me again. Ethan's stomach twisted. Ghost him. Lucas was the one who'd vanished. But the accusation stung. Unearthing guilt Ethan hadn't faced in years. He'd run from Ohio. From Lucas. From himself. Maybe Lucas had a right to be angry. The day dragged. Meetings blending into a haze of venture capital jargon and product demos. Ethan's mind was elsewhere, replaying that night behind the bleachers. Lucas's lips. Warm and urgent. The way his hands trembled as they held Ethan's face. The memory was a knife, cutting through the armor he'd built. By 7:30, Ethan was in a cab, the Brooklyn skyline rising like a dare. The warehouse district was a maze of graffiti and rust, far from the polished world he'd created. He found the address, a crumbling brick building, its windows glowing with makeshift lights. Inside, the air smelled of paint and dust. Lucas stood in the center, surrounded by canvases, his dark hair longer now, his frame leaner but still familiar. Ethan Caldwell, Lucas said, his voice low, edged with something sharp. Didn't think you'd show? You didn't give me much choice. Ethan replied, his throat tight. Up close, Lucas was a collision of past and present, same hazel eyes, same defiance, but older, harder. A scar traced his jaw, new since Ethan last saw him. Lucas stepped closer, his gaze unyielding. 10 years. And you're a big shot now. Forbes. Huh. Bet they don't know you were just a scared kid who left me behind. Ethan flinched. I didn't leave you. You were gone. Lucas. I looked for you. Not hard enough. Lucas shot back, his voice breaking. You think I wanted to stay in that town after what happened? After your dad told mine I was a sinner. The words hit like a punch. Ethan hadn't known. His father's wrath hadn't just destroyed him, it had torn Lucas's life apart too. I didn't know. Ethan whispered, his voice raw. I thought you hated me. Lucas laughed. Bitter. Hate you. I loved you. Ethan. And you ran. The air between them crackled, heavy with unspoken years. Ethan wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap, but fear held him back. Lucas wasn't just a ghost, was a mirror, reflecting everything Ethan had buried. And now, with one wrong move, Lucas could bring it all crashing down. I'm here now, Ethan said, stepping closer. What do you want? Lucas. Lucas's eyes softened, just for a moment. I want the truth. Not the Forbes version. The real you. Ethan's heart pounded. The real him was a risk he'd never taken, not for investors, not for the world, not even for himself. But standing here, with Lucas's gaze cutting through his defenses, Ethan felt the weight of a decade's lies begin to crack. The warehouse was a cathedral of shadows, its high ceilings swallowing the hum of Brooklyn outside. Ethan stood frozen, Lucas's words echoing in his skull, the real you. He wanted to laugh, to tell Lucas there was no real Ethan left, just a carefully crafted mask that had carried him to the top. But the way Lucas looked at him, eyes burning with a mix of anger and hope, made lying impossible. I don't know who that is anymore, Ethan admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. He turned away, staring at a canvas splashed with vibrant reds and blues, a chaotic portrait of a city street. It was Lucas's work, raw and unapologetic. Everything Ethan wasn't. Lucas stepped closer, his boots scuffing the concrete floor. Bullshit. You're still in there. Ethan. You're just too scared to let it out. Scared. Ethan spun to face him, his voice rising. You think I got here by being scared? I built Lamora from nothing. I clawed my way out of that hellhole of a town, out of the shame they buried me in. You don't get to stand there and call me a coward. Lucas didn't flinch. You built a cage, not a life. You're hiding who you are. Same as you did back then. Only now, you've got a fancier suit. The words cut deeper than Ethan wanted to admit. He paced, the warehouse's chill seeping into his bones. You don't get it. Lucas, Lumira's not just a company. It's helping people like us, who feel like they're drowning. If I come out, if I tell the world I'm gay, the investors pull out. The board freaks. Everything I've built collapses. Lucas's jaw tightened. So you're okay living a lie, pretending you're someone you're not, just for a paycheck. It's not about the money. Ethan snapped. It's about the impact. Lumira's AI has saved lives. Suicide rates are down because of our app. You think I'm going to risk that for what? A headline. For yourself, Lucas said quietly. For the kid who kissed me behind the bleachers and didn't care who saw. Ethan's throat closed. He could still feel that kiss. The way Lucas's breath had hitched. The way the world had felt infinite for one fleeting moment. But that kid was gone. Replaced by a man who'd learned to survive by burying his heart. I didn't come here to fight, Ethan said, softening. I came because you asked. Because I owe you that much. Lucas's expression shifted. A flicker of vulnerability breaking through. You don't owe me anything. Ethan. I saw you on that billboard. And it hurt. Not because you made it, but because you looked so damn alone up there. The words hung between them, heavy and true. Ethan wanted to argue, to say he wasn't alone, that he had colleagues, friends, a life. But the truth was, he'd been running from loneliness since Ohio, filling the void with work, accolades, anything to keep the silence at bay. Why now? Ethan asked, his voice raw. Why reach out after 10 years? Lucas hesitated, his fingers brushing the scar on his jaw. I didn't know where you were until I saw your face on the news. I spent years angry, thinking you'd abandoned me. But then I heard about Lumira, about what you're doing, and I realized you're still fighting, just like I am. Fighting? Ethan raised an eyebrow. You're a photographer. Lucas, you're not exactly on the front lines. Lucas's laugh was sharp, humorless. You think art isn't a fight. Every shot I take is a middle finger to the people who told me I was nothing. You're not the only one who got kicked out. Ethan, my dad threw me out too. After your father spread the word. I ended up in foster care, then on the streets. Every day was a war. Ethan's chest tightened. He hadn't let himself imagine what Lucas's life had been like after that night. I'm sorry, he said, the words feeling inadequate. I should have looked harder for you. Lucas shrugged, but his eyes betrayed the weight of those years. We were kids. We did what we could. But now we've got a choice. What choice? Ethan asked, though he already knew the answer. To stop hiding, Lucas said. To be honest. With the world. With each other. Ethan's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. A notification from Priya, board meeting tomorrow. 9 a.m. Investors asking for your Q3 projections. Reality crashed back in. A reminder of the empire he'd built and the lies that held it together. He looked at Lucas, standing there like a piece of his past he couldn't outrun, and felt the ground shift beneath him. I need time, Ethan said finally. It's not simple. Lucas nodded, but his eyes were hard. I'm not going anywhere this time. But don't make me wait forever. Ethan. The next day, Ethan's office felt like a pressure cooker. The board meeting loomed, and the investors were restless. Lumira's stock was soaring, but whispers of a competitor in AI startup with deeper pockets were making the board jittery. Ethan presented his projections with his usual polish, but his mind was elsewhere, replaying Lucas's words. After the meeting, Priya lingered, her sharp eyes catching the tension in Ethan's posture. You've been off since the gala, she said, closing the door. What's going on? Ethan hesitated. Priya was his closest confidant, The only one who knew bits of his past, though not the whole story. Someone from my old life showed up. He said carefully, "It's complicated." Old life as in Ohio. Priya's voice was gentle but probing. The part you don't talk about. Ethan nodded, his fingers tracing the edge of his desk. Yeah. And he's asking me to do something I'm not sure I can. Priya leaned against the wall, arms crossed. You've built something incredible, Ethan. But you're carrying something heavy. Maybe it's time to let it go. He wanted to tell her everything about Lucas, about the fear that kept him silent. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, he forced a smile. I'll figure it out. That night, Ethan found himself back in Greenpoint, drawn to Lucas like a moth to a flame. The warehouse was quieter now, the canvases glowing under soft lights. Lucas was sorting photos, his movements deliberate, almost meditative. You're back, Lucas said without looking up. Didn't expect that so soon. Neither did I, Ethan admitted. He stepped closer, his eyes catching on a photo, a grainy shot of two boys holding hands. Their faces blurred, but their connection unmistakable. Is that us? Lucas said, his voice soft. I took it that summer, before everything went to hell. Kept it all these years. Ethan's heart ached. The photo a reminder of a life he'd tried to forget. Why keep it? He asked. Because it was real, Lucas said, meeting his gaze. And I'm done pretending it wasn't. The photo trembled in Ethan's hand, the edges worn from years of handling. Two boys, frozen in a moment of defiance, their hands clasped under a fading Ohio sunset. He could almost hear the crickets, feel the heat of that summer night when he and Lucas had believed they could outrun the world. You kept this, Ethan said, his voice thick. All this time. Lucas leaned against a table, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. It was all I had left of you. After you left, I thought you were gone for good. That picture, it was proof I didn't dream you up. Ethan set the photo down, his fingers lingering on the image. I didn't leave you, Lucas. I was kicked out. I had no thingio money, no phone, just a bus ticket and a black eye from my dad. I tried to find you, but you were gone. Lucas's eyes darkened. Gone. I was in hell. Ethan. My dad locked me in the house for weeks after your father told him what we did. Said he'd beat the devil out of me. When that didn't work, he threw me out too. I ended up in a group home, then on the streets. You think I didn't want to find you? Ethan's knees felt weak. He sank onto a crate, the weight of Lucas's words crushing him. I didn't know, he said again, the words hollow. I thought you'd moved on, that you hated me for what happened. Lucas's laugh was raw, jagged. Hate you. I was in love with you, Ethan. That's why it hurt so much when you disappeared. I thought you chose to leave me behind. The air in the warehouse felt too thin, like Ethan couldn't breathe. He'd spent a decade building a life on the assumption that Lucas had abandoned him, that he was alone in his exile. But they'd both been cast out, both been broken by the same cruel hands. I'm sorry, Ethan said, his voice cracking. I should have fought harder to find you. Lucas's expression softened, but only slightly. We can't change the past. But we're here now. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Ethan looked away, the city's distant hum a reminder of the life waiting for him outside. Lamora, the board, the investors, they all demanded the version of Ethan Caldwell that didn't exist. The one who'd never kissed a boy behind the bleachers. It's not that simple, he said. If I come out, I lose everything. The company, the mission, it's all at risk. Lucas stepped closer, his voice low but fierce. You're not saving the world if you're killing yourself to do it. You think I don't know what it's like to hide? I spent years pretending I was fine, shooting photos to survive, telling myself I didn't need you. But I was lying too. Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to reach for Lucas, to pull him close and erase the years between them. But fear was a chain, locking him in place. What do you want from me? Lucas, you want me to blow up my life, to tell the world I'm gay and let the chips fall. I want you to be free, Lucas said, his voice steady. Not for me, not for the world, for you. The words hit like a wave, stirring something deep in Ethan's core. Freedom. He'd chased it in boardrooms and bank accounts, but it was always out of reach. Now, standing here with Lucas, it felt closer and more dangerous than ever. The next week was a blur of meetings and media interviews, each one a test of Ethan's carefully constructed facade. Lamora was launching a new feature, an AI chatbot designed to support queer youth in crisis. And the irony wasn't lost on him. He'd poured his heart into the project, drawing on his own pain to make it real. But he couldn't bring himself to say why it mattered so much. At a press conference, a journalist asked, "Mr. Caldwell, this new feature seems personal. Care to share what inspired it?" Ethan's smile was tight, his palms sweaty. "I've seen how hard it is for kids to feel safe being themselves," he said, choosing his words carefully. "This is about giving them a lifeline." The room nodded, satisfied. But Ethan felt Lucas's absence like a phantom limb. He'd texted Lucas after their warehouse meeting, promising to stay in touch. But the silence from Lucas's end was deafening. Had he pushed too hard? Or was Lucas giving him space to decide for himself? That night, Ethan found himself at a dive bar in the East Village, a place far from his usual polished haunts. He nursed a whiskey, the burn grounding him as he scrolled through Lucas's photography page again. Each image was a story, gritty, honest, alive. One photo stopped him cold, a self-portrait of Lucas, his face half in shadow, his eyes raw with something Ethan recognized: resilience born of pain. He typed a message, "I'm trying. Lucas, I just don't know how to do this yet." He hit send, then downed the rest of his drink. The reply came an hour later. "I'm not asking you to have all the answers. Just don't run again." Ethan's heart thudded. He paid his tab and stepped into the chilly night, the city's pulse syncing with his own. He wasn't ready to come out. Not yet. But Lucas's words were a tether, pulling him towards something he couldn't ignore. Back at Lamora, the pressure was mounting. The competitor startup, Neural Nest, was gaining traction, and Ethan's investors were breathing down his neck. At a late-night strategy session, Priya slid a tablet across the table, showing a leaked email from Neural Nest CEO. "They're targeting our queer youth initiative," she said, claiming we're just pandering for clout. Ethan's jaw clenched. "They don't know a damn thing about why we're doing this." Priya raised an eyebrow. "Maybe it's time you told them. Not just to bore the world. People can feel when something's real. Ethan, they'll rally behind you." He wanted to believe her, but the fear was still there, a shadow he couldn't shake. "If I tell the truth, I could lose everything," he said. Priya leaned forward, her voice firm. "Or you could gain something better." That night, Ethan dreamed of Ohio, the bleachers, the kiss, the way Lucas's laughter had felt like sunlight. When he woke, his phone was buzzing with a new message from Lucas. "Meet me at the High Line tomorrow, 6 p.m. No pressure. Just you and me." Ethan stared at the screen, his heart a battlefield of hope and fear. He didn't know what he'd say when he saw Lucas, but for the first time in years, he wanted to find out. The High Line at dusk was a ribbon of green slicing through Manhattan's concrete heart, its paths lined with wildflowers and couples stealing moments under the fading light. Ethan arrived early, his nerves a live wire as he leaned against a railing, the Hudson River glinting below. Lucas's invitation felt like a crossroads, one path leading back to the safety of his curated life, the other toward a truth he wasn't sure he could face. Lucas appeared at the far end of the path, his leather jacket a stark contrast to the city's polish. He moved with a quiet confidence, his eyes locking on Ethan's with an intensity that made the air feel charged. You came, Lucas said, stopping a few feet away, his voice carrying a mix of relief and wariness. I said I would, Ethan replied, his hands stuffed in his pockets to hide their trembling. You're making a habit of dragging me out of my comfort zone. Lucas's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Somebody's gotta. You've been hiding in that glass tower too long. They walked in silence for a moment. The cities hum a soft backdrop. Ethan stole glances at Lucas, noting the way his shoulders carried the weight of years. The way his fingers twitched like they were itching to hold something or someone. Why here? Ethan asked finally, gesturing to the High Line's sprawling view. Lucas shrugged. It's open. Free. Nobody cares who you are up here. Felt like the right place to talk. Ethan nodded, his throat tight. He wanted to ask 1,000 questions where Lucas had been, what he'd survived, why he'd reached out now. But the words that came out were simpler. Rawer. I missed you, he said, his voice barely audible. Every day, I missed you. Lucas stopped walking, his eyes searching Ethan's face. Then why didn't you fight for us? For yourself? I was scared, Ethan admitted, the confession spilling out like blood. I still am. You don't know what it's like. Lucas, every move I make is watched. One wrong step, and Lumera's gone. The work we're doing, the kids we're helping, it's all gone. Lucas's expression hardened. You think I don't get it? I've been scraping by, taking photos of strangers to pay rent, while you're up there playing savior. But you're not saving anyone if you're lying to yourself. Ethan flinched, the truth a blade he couldn't dodge. I'm trying to do good, he said, his voice breaking. Isn't that enough? It's not about enough, Lucas said, stepping closer, his voice low and urgent. It's about being whole. You're tearing yourself apart. Ethan, I can see it in your eyes. The words hung between them, heavy with truth. Ethan wanted to argue, to defend the life he'd built. But Lucas's gaze stripped him bare. For a moment, he was 17 again, standing behind the bleachers, heart pounding with the thrill of being seen. I don't know how to do this, Ethan said finally, his voice raw. I don't know how to be me. Lucas's hand brushed his, a fleeting touch that sent sparks through Ethan's veins. You don't have to know, Lucas said. Just start. They stood there, the city sprawling around them, a world that could crush or cradle them depending on what they chose next. Ethan's phone buzzed, a reminder of a late-night meeting with Lumera's board, but he silenced it. For the first time in years, he wanted to stay in the moment. The next morning, Ethan woke to a flood of emails and missed calls. Neural Nest had just announced a partnership with a major health conglomerate, a direct shot at Lumera's market share. The board was in a panic, demanding an emergency meeting. Ethan sat through it, his mind half present, Lucas's words echoing louder than the investors' complaints. We need to go on the offensive. One board member, a grizzled venture capitalist named Harold, barked. Hit back with a PR campaign. Show the world Lumera's the real deal. Ethan nodded absently, his thoughts on the High Line, on Lucas's hand brushing his. He'd felt alive last night, more than he had in years. But the boardroom was a reminder of the stakes, hundreds of employees, millions of users, a mission he couldn't abandon. After the meeting, Priya caught him in the hallway. You're distracted again, she said, her tone gentle but firm. This thing with your past, it's eating you up. Talk to me. Ethan hesitated, then gestured to his office. Once the door was closed, he let it out, not everything, but enough. There's someone I used to know, he said. Someone I loved. He's back, and he's asking me to stop hiding who I am. But if I do that, I risk everything we've built here. Priya's eyes softened. Ethan, I've watched you build Lumera from the ground up. You're brilliant, but you're human. If this person's making you question things, maybe it's time to listen. I can't just come out, Ethan said, frustration creeping into his voice. The investors, The board they'll turn on me. Maybe, Priya said. Or maybe they'll see what I see, a leader who's stronger for being honest. You're not just running a company, Ethan. You're showing people it's okay to be themselves. Start with you. Her words stayed with him as he left the office. The city's lights a blur through the cab window. He texted Lucas, "Can we meet again? Tomorrow. Same place." The reply was instant, "I'll be there." The High Line was quieter the next evening, the air crisp with the promise of fall. Lucas was waiting, a camera slung around his neck, his expression guarded but open. "You're making this a habit," he said, a hint of a smile breaking through. Ethan managed a laugh, though his nerves were raw. "You're a hard guy to say no to." They walked again, their steps sinking like they'd never been apart. Lucas talked about his life bouncing between cities, finding solace in his camera, capturing stories the world overlooked. Ethan listened, each word a piece of the puzzle he'd been missing for a decade. "I want to try," Ethan said suddenly, stopping under a canopy of string lights. "I want to be honest, like you said, but I need time. And I need you." Lucas's eyes widened, a flicker of hope crossing his face. "You mean that?" "I do," Ethan said, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. "But I'm not promising it'll be easy." Lucas reached for his hand, his grip warm and sure. "Nothing worth it ever is." For the first time in years, Ethan felt the weight of his secrets lift. Just a little. He didn't know what came next, but with Lucas's hand in his, he was ready to find out. The string lights above the High Line cast a soft glow on Lucas's face, his eyes holding Ethan's with a quiet intensity that made the world feel smaller, safer. Ethan's hand was still in Lucas's, their fingers intertwined, a tether to a past he'd tried to bury and a future he was only beginning to imagine. For a moment, neither spoke, the city's hum fading into a backdrop for their shared silence. "I don't know how to do this," Ethan said finally, his voice low but steady. "But I want to try. With you." Lucas's grip tightened, a smile breaking through the guarded edges of his expression. "That's all I needed to hear," he said. "We'll figure it out together." The promise hung between them, fragile but real. Ethan felt a spark of hope, but it was tempered by the reality waiting beyond the High Line's glow. Lamora, the board, the investors, they loomed like storm clouds, ready to tear apart everything he'd built. But standing here, with Lucas's warmth grounding him, Ethan felt a courage he hadn't known in years. They walked on, their conversation shifting to lighter things: Lucas's latest photo project, Ethan's secret love for cheesy sci-fi movies. For a few hours, they were just two people, not the ghosts of their past or the weight of their choices. But as the night grew colder, Ethan's phone buzzed, a sharp reminder of the world he couldn't escape. A text from Priya, "Neural Nest just dropped a smear campaign. They're calling Lumira's queer initiative a PR stunt. We need you at the office now." Ethan's stomach dropped. He showed Lucas the message, his jaw tight. "This is what I'm up against," he said. "If I come out now, it'll be blood in the water." Lucas's expression darkened, but his voice was steady. "Then fight back. Not by hiding, but by being louder. Show them who you are, Ethan. Not just for you, for everyone your app's trying to help." Ethan wanted to argue, to say it was too risky, but Lucas's words struck a chord. He'd built Lamora to give people a voice, a lifeline. How could he do that if he was silencing himself? "I need to go," Ethan said, reluctance heavy in his voice. "But I'll call you tomorrow. I promise." Lucas nodded, his hand lingering on Ethan's arm. "Don't disappear on me again. Okay?" "Never," Ethan said, and for the first time, he meant it. The Lamora office was a war room when Ethan arrived. The team huddled around screens tracking Neural Nest's campaign. Priya met him at the door, her face grim. "They're hitting us hard," she said, handing him a tablet. Social media's blowing up, and the investors are spooked. They want a response by morning. Ethan scanned the headline as clickbait, accusing Lamora of exploiting queer youth for profit. The accusations were baseless, but they stung. Each one a reminder of the hypocrisy Ethan lived every day. He'd poured his heart into the Queer Youth Initiative, but he couldn't defend it fully without exposing himself. "We need a statement," Priya said, her eyes searching his. "Something real. People can smell inauthenticity a mile away." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. He spent the night drafting a response, his team throwing out ideas, but none felt right. Every word sounded like a dodge, a half-truth. By 3 a.m., he was alone in his office, the city silent outside. He pulled up Lucas's photography page, scrolling through images of raw, unfiltered lives. One photo, a young person holding a pride flag. Their face defiant stopped him. The caption read, "Courage is being seen." He texted Lucas, "I'm scared, but you're right. I need to do this." Lucas's reply came instantly, "You've got this. I'm here." By dawn, Ethan had a new draft, not just a statement, but a letter to Lamora's users, employees, and the world. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. He sent it to Priya with a note, "Review this. If it's too much, tell me." Her response was immediate, "It's about time." The next day, Ethan stood in front of a small press conference, his heart pounding as cameras flashed. The letter was public now, posted on Lamora's website and social media. In it, he'd shared his story, not all of it, but enough. He was gay. He'd been kicked out at 17. Lamora's mission was personal because he'd been one of those kids, lost and alone, and he wanted to make sure no one else felt that way. The room was silent as he finished reading the letter aloud, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. "I've spent years hiding who I am," he said, looking directly into the cameras. "Not anymore. Lamora isn't just a company, it's a promise to every kid out there that they're enough, just as they are." The questions came fast, some supportive, others sharp. A reporter from a conservative outlet asked, "Won't this hurt your investors' confidence? Your stock's already dipping." Ethan took a breath, channeling Lucas's defiance. "If our investors don't believe in our mission, they're not the right fit. Lamora is about impact, not just profit." The room buzzed, and Ethan felt a strange calm settle over him. He'd taken the leap, and the world hadn't ended, not yet. As he stepped off the stage, Priya squeezed his arm. "You did good," she whispered. "Now go find that guy." Ethan met Lucas at a small cafe in Brooklyn, the kind with mismatched chairs and coffee that tasted like home. Lucas was waiting at a corner table, a newspaper open to a story about Ethan's press conference. "You did it," Lucas said, his smile wide and unguarded. "I'm terrified," Ethan admitted, sliding into the seat across from him. "The board's freaking out, and Twitter's a war zone. But it feels right." Lucas reached across the table, his hand covering Ethan's. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice soft but fierce. "Not just for today, but for everything you've survived." Ethan's throat tightened, the weight of Lucas's words sinking in. For the first time, he didn't feel like he was running. He felt like he was standing still, exactly where he was meant to be. "What now?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lucas's smile turned playful, a hint of the boy from Ohio shining through. "Now we figure out what's next. Together." The cafe's warmth wrapped around Ethan like a shield, but the world outside was anything but gentle. His phone buzzed relentlessly, notifications from investors, reporters, and Lamora's PR team, all reacting to his public coming out. Some praised his courage. Others warned of plummeting stock prices and angry shareholders. But sitting across from Lucas, his hand still warm against Ethan's, the chaos felt distant, like a storm he could weather. "You look like you're waiting for the sky to fall," Lucas said, his tone teasing but his eyes soft with concern. Ethan managed a half-smile. It might. The board's calling an emergency meeting tomorrow. Some of the investors are threatening to pull out. Lucas leaned back, his expression unyielding. Let them. You built Lamora without their blessing. You'll keep it standing without them too. Ethan wanted to believe him, but the weight of his decision was sinking in. Coming out wasn't just a personal act, it was a grenade lobbed into the heart of his carefully constructed empire. Still, Lucas's confidence was a lifeline, grounding him in a way nothing else could. I meant what I said, Ethan told him, his voice low. About figuring this out together. I don't know what that looks like, but I want you in my life. Lucas's eyes softened, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through. I want that too. But you need to know I am not perfect. I've got my own scars, my own fights. You sure you're ready for that? Ethan reached for his hand again, their fingers locking with a quiet certainty. I'm done running. From you. From myself. Whatever comes next. We face it. Lucas's smile was small but real, a promise in itself. They stayed in the cafe until it closed, talking about everything and nothing, their old dreams, their new fears, the way the world had changed and stayed the same. For the first time in a decade, Ethan felt like he was building something real, not just a facade. The board meeting was a battlefield. Ethan sat at the head of the conference table, the Manhattan skyline a stark backdrop through the glass walls. The investors were a mix of supportive and furious, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of demands. Harold, the grizzled venture capitalist, led the charge. You've put us in a precarious position, Ethan, he said, his tone icy. This personal revelation could tank our credibility with key partners. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady. Lamora's mission is about authenticity. If I can't live that, how can I expect our users to trust us? This isn't just about might, it's about the millions of kids we're trying to reach. A younger investor, a woman named Claire, spoke up. I agree with Ethan. The data's clear, our queer youth initiative is driving engagement. People want brands that stand for something. This could be a strength, not a liability. The room split, arguments flaring. Ethan let them talk, his mind drifting to Lucas's words, show them who you are. By the meeting's end, no one walked away happy, but Ethan had made his case. Lamora would stay the course, and so would he. Afterward, Priya found him in his office, her expression a mix of pride and worry. You held your ground, she said, but it's going to get rough. Neural Nest is doubling down on their smear campaign, and some of the board members are still rattled. Let them be, Ethan said, surprising himself with his calm. I'm done playing their game. If Lamora is going to survive, it's going to be on my terms. Priya's smile was faint but genuine. You're different today. Stronger. Whoever this guy is, he's good for you. Ethan laughed. A real laugh. The kind he hadn't felt in years. Yeah, he is. That evening, Ethan met Lucas at his warehouse studio, the space now familiar, almost comforting. Lucas was editing photos, his focus intense until he saw Ethan. How'd it go? He asked, setting his laptop aside. Like walking through a minefield, Ethan said, sinking onto a crate. But I'm still standing. Lucas crossed the room, sitting beside him. You're more than standing. You're fighting. That's who you are. Ethan the fighter, not the guy on the billboard. Ethan looked at him, the weight of the day lifting just a little. I'm trying to be. But it's hard. Lucas, the world's watching, and half of them want me to fail. Then let them watch, Lucas said, his voice fierce. You're not doing this for them. You're doing it for you. For us. The word us hit Ethan like a spark, igniting something he'd buried for too long. He leaned in, closing the distance between them, and kissed Lucas. It was slow, tentative at first, then deeper, a decade's worth of longing pouring out. Lucas kissed him back, his hand steady on Ethan's face, grounding him in a way nothing else could. When they pulled apart, Ethan's heart was racing, but not with fear. "I don't know what's next," he said, his voice soft, "but I wanted to be with you." Lucas's smile was radiant, unguarded. "Then we'll figure it out, one step at a time." The next week was a whirlwind. Lumira's stock took a hit, but user engagement spiked, especially among younger demographics. Ethan's letter had gone viral, shared by activists and everyday people alike. Messages poured in, kids thanking him, parents saying their children felt seen for the first time. It wasn't a victory, not yet, but it was a start. Ethan and Lucas spent more time together, carving out moments between Ethan's chaotic schedule and Lucas's shoots. They walked the city, shared quiet dinners, rebuilt the trust they'd lost. Lucas showed Ethan his world-gritty art shows, late-night street photography, and Ethan found himself falling, not just for Lucas, but for the life he could have if he stopped hiding. One night, as they sat on Lucas's rooftop, the city sprawling below, Ethan turned to him. "I'm going to keep fighting," he said. "For Lamora. For us. But I need you to know it's not going to be easy." Lucas took his hand, his grip firm. "I don't need easy. I just need you." Ethan felt the truth of those words settle deep, a foundation stronger than any he'd built before. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, he wasn't walking it alone. The rooftop air was crisp, carrying the scent of asphalt and distant rain. Ethan leaned against the ledge, Lucas beside him, their shoulders brushing as the city's lights pulsed below. For the first time in years, Ethan felt anchored not by success or status, but by the man next to him, whose quiet strength had become his compass. "I used to think I had to choose," Ethan said, his voice soft against the night, "between who I am and what I've built. You made me see I don't have to." Lucas turned to him, his hazel eyes catching the glow of a nearby neon sign. "You were always enough, Ethan. The world just made you forget it." The words settled deep, healing wounds Ethan hadn't realized still bled. He reached for Lucas's hand, their fingers intertwining with a familiarity that felt like coming home. They stayed there, silent, letting the city breathe around them. The weeks that followed were a test of fire. Lumira's stock stabilized, but the board remained divided. Harold and a few others pushed for Ethan to step back, arguing his personal choices were a liability. But Claire and the younger investors rallied behind him, and the public response was undeniable. Lumira's Queer Youth Initiative was gaining traction, with downloads spiking and stories of impact flooding in. Ethan threw himself into the work, but it was different now. He wasn't hiding behind the mission. He was living it. At a community event for queer youth, he spoke openly about his past, his voice steady as he shared the pain of being kicked out and the hope he'd found in rebuilding. The crowd, kids, parents, activists listened, some with tears in their eyes. Afterward, a teenager approached him, clutching a Lamora app sticker. "Thanks for saying it out loud," they said. "It makes me feel like I can too." Ethan's heart swelled, the moment a reminder of why he'd started Lamora in the first place. He texted Lucas later, "You were right. This is worth it." Lucas's reply was simple, "Told you. Now come over. I'm making tacos." Life with Lucas was a balance of chaos and calm. They navigated their rekindled connection with care, rebuilding trust one moment at a time. Lucas's warehouse became Ethan's refuge, a place where he could shed the weight of his public life. They cooked together, argued over music, laughed until their sides ached. Lucas's photos lined the walls, each one a story of resilience. And Ethan found himself inspired by the man who'd survived as fiercely as he had. But the past wasn't done with them. One morning, Ethan woke to a news alert. A tabloid had dug up an old police report from Ohio, detailing the night he and Lucas were caught behind the bleachers. The story was sensationalized, painting Ethan as a troubled teen who'd escaped his past to become a tech darling. The article didn't name Lucas, but it was close enough to make Ethan's blood run cold. He called Lucas immediately. "Did you see it?" he asked, his voice tight. "Yeah," Lucas said, his tone calm but edged. "It's just noise. Ethan, they don't know us." "They're getting close," Ethan said, pacing his apartment. "If they find you, if they drag you into this, then we deal with it." Lucas cut in. "Together. You're not in this alone anymore." Ethan took a breath, grounding himself in Lucas's words. He wasn't that scared kid anymore, and neither was Lucas. They'd survived worse than tabloid gossip. The final test came at Lumira's annual gala, a glittering event in a Manhattan ballroom. Ethan stood at the podium, addressing a crowd of investors, employees, and advocates. Lucas was there, in the back, his presence a quiet strength. Ethan's speech was different, this Timino-polished platitudes. Just truth. "I started Lamora because I know what it's like to feel invisible," he said, his voice carrying across the room. 10 years ago, I was kicked out for being who I am. I lost my home, my family, and the person I loved most." His eyes found Lucas, a flicker of a smile passing between them. "But I found my way back, not just to him, but to myself. Lamora isn't just about technology. It's about giving people the courage to live their truth." The room erupted in applause, but Ethan's focus was on Lucas, who nodded, his eyes shining with pride. Later, as they danced in a quiet corner of the ballroom, Lucas whispered, "You're not hiding anymore." "Neither are you," Ethan replied, his hand resting on Lucas's cheek. Months later, Ethan stood on the Forbes stage, accepting an award for innovation. The headline had changed, no longer 30 under 30, but a feature on leaders who dared to be authentic. He spoke about Lamora, about the lives they'd touched, but he also spoke about Lucas, the man who'd reminded him who he was. Backstage, Lucas pulled him into a hug, his voice rough with emotion. "You did it, Ethan. You're free." Ethan smiled, his heart full. "We did it." Their life wasn't perfect. The tabloids still circled, and the board still grumbled. But Ethan and Lucas built something stronger than fear, a love rooted in truth. A mission that mattered, a future they'd fight for together. And in the end, that was more than enough.